We're famous artists. Yes, famous artists.
Paul Gauguin.
Edward Hubbard.
And Van Gogh.
Oh! Pablo Picasso.
I thought so.
Goya.
Hawaii.
We're definitely people you should know. Sandro Botticelli, Michelangelo, Paul Klee. The names just keep on coming and we haven't got all day.
We're famous artists.
Renoir.
Famous artists.
Au revoir.
Monet,
Da Vinci, Peter Bruegel. Don't pinch me. Some people think we're geniuses. Some people think we're weird.
Weird?
What do you mean?
Weird is a relative term.
Toulouse-Lautrec, Mary Cassatt. And please don't touch my beard. Andy Warhol, Jacob Lawrence, Jackson Pollock too.
I'm afraid we have to go now.
So we'll just say toodaloo. And if you think we're slightly nuts, that may be slightly true. But that, my fine young viewer, will leave up to you.
Hi, I'm Faith Ringgold. That's right, I'm up here. With talent and a desire to do a thing. Anything. I believe that anyone can fly. I know. I did it myself. I became an artist. I'm known for my paintings, prints, masks, and soft sculpture, mosaics, and children's books. My works of art often show my feelings about being an African-American woman. I'm probably best known for my story quilts. I sew them together with pictures I paint on canvas squares. On some of the squares, I add handwritten stories. With my story quilts, you not only get to see great pictures, but you can read about them at the same time. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in 1930 in New York City. My name was Faith Jones. My family lived in a section of New York called Harlem. Harlem was a place that welcomed thousands and thousands of African Americans from southern states. They moved there to find jobs and escape the prejudice and discrimination that was going on at the time. Many famous people came to Harlem. Great jazz musicians like Duke Ellington and Ella Fitzgerald. Athletes, authors, and artists. It was an exciting and creative time in Harlem. On hot summer nights, my family and our neighbors would go up to the flat roof of our apartment building to cool off. We called our rooftop Tar Beach because it was covered with tar paper. This is one of my most famous story quilts, named Tar Beach, about the magic I felt on those hot summer evenings up on the roof. At night, I loved to look up in the sky at all the stars and dream. I could see my favorite bridge, the George Washington Bridge, all lit up. We'd have picnics, and sometimes we got to stay up late and listen to the grown-ups tell us stories about our family history. It was great fun. Here's a picture of me with my sister Barbara on the roof of our apartment building, Tar Beach. That's me on the left. Here we are with our older brother, Andrew. One of our favorite things to do while we were growing up was to listen to the radio. Before people had televisions in their homes or computers, storytelling and listening to the radio were major forms of entertainment.
That's a double play, and that's the inning.
Listening to our favorite shows, we would let our imaginations run wild. When I was really little, I thought tiny people were inside the radio talking through a speaker.
Hurry up, everyone. The show starts in 5 minutes.
I spent a lot of my childhood at home. You see, I was sick a lot of the time with asthma, which made it hard to breathe and go to school. My mother, who I always called Willie, mostly taught me. Willie had become a well-known fashion designer in Harlem. Willie really knew how to sew. She taught me how to sew too. I spent lots of time drawing, coloring, and sewing. I made all kinds of neat things, like shoes, purses, even undies.
Faith, are you doing your homework?
Yes, ma'am. On days when I was feeling good, Willie would take me to museums and stage performances.
Well, Faith, would you like to see Ella Fitzgerald or Duke Ellington?
Maybe Ella. I never forgot those lively jazz shows I saw at the theater. To me, they were works of art, just as much as paintings and sculpture. Later, I would make paintings and prints of jazz musicians and singers. These pictures are so colorful and full of life. You can almost hear jazz music when you look at them. I always loved art. So in college, I made up my mind to be a full-time artist. One day, my instructor insulted a drawing I made and told me he didn't think I had the talent to be an artist.
Please write down what these things are supposed to be.
Oh, that's all I needed to hear. I'd show my teacher and everyone else I would be an artist. And a good one, too. But becoming a full-time artist wasn't going to be easy. You see, during college, I married my high school sweetheart, Earl Wallace. We had 2 daughters right away, Michelle and Barbara. As soon as I graduated from college, I got a job as an art teacher. Unfortunately, our marriage didn't work out, and Earl and I ended up getting a divorce. Now, I had to find a way to become a full-time artist, work as an art teacher, continue my education, and raise 2 daughters. Fortunately, I got a lot of help from Willie. Thank goodness for her. Then there was this man named Burdett Ringgold.
Faith, Burdett's here. He wants to marry you.
We fell in love and got married. Now I had more help, and I was able to work more on my art. In college, I had learned about all the great European artists, like Leonardo da Vinci and Vincent van Gogh. You can see how my first paintings were influenced by the old master artists. I was also very interested in African art. I studied the patterns, rhythms, and colors used in African art forms. I loved the power and mystery I saw in African sculpture. I was also inspired by many great African American artists, like Jacob Lawrence and Romare Bearden. Even though I appreciated European art, I wanted to create art based on my life and my experiences as an African American woman living in New York. So I took what I'd learned from the great master artists and combined it with all my discoveries and inspirations, and started doing paintings that were more meaningful to me. I painted pictures of things I saw going on in the country at that moment, and in my own neighborhood. Things that African Americans were experiencing, especially African American women. And I started feeling really good about my work. But now the question was, how to get my paintings noticed. I began showing my work to art dealers all over New York City. But during this time, the 1960s, gallery owners and museums didn't think anyone cared to see artwork done by an African American woman. But I wasn't going to give up till someone noticed me and my art. I got so fired up, I even helped organize protests in front of New York City art museums.
That is the weirdest looking abstract sculpture I've ever seen.
We're not sculpture, man. We're protesters. These protests helped get museum people to become aware of African American artists. Over time, my work and I began to get noticed too. Here I am in front of a painting I created for the Women's House of Detention in New York City. I called it For the Women's House. I wanted this painting to be inspirational and show women living and working in a positive way. I also started using my sewing skills to create my soft sculptures. I would sew the faces, and my mother would sew the clothes. It was so much fun. I used my knowledge of African art to create my mask series. I combined African designs with fabric and beads to create three-dimensional work. This is Mrs. Jones, my mother. I'm the blonde one, by the way. This sculpture always cracks me up. Soon, I was selling enough paintings to be able to follow my dream of becoming a full-time artist. You might say I was beginning to fly. One thing that helped make it easier to show my work was a discovery I made while viewing an exhibit of paintings from Tibet, a country in Asia. These paintings, called tankas, were framed in cloth. I thought that tankas would look great with my paintings. So I was inspired to create my own tankas. I would paint the fabric, and Willie would sew the cloth frames. So I could forget about the heavy wooden frames and glass that most artists used. Now, I could just roll up or fold my paintings. It made it much easier to get my artwork to galleries and art shows.
Easy, easy, easy. Watch the corner.
I got it.
Excuse me. Make room. Coming through. See you upstairs, boys.
I'm okay. Really?
It wasn't long before I used my sewing skills to create my famous quilts. Here's a picture of Willie helping me work on the very first quilt I made, called Echoes of Harlem. In this quilt, I showed people and neighbors I knew in Harlem. Quilt making is an important African American art tradition which has been handed down through generations of women. Willie learned it from her grandmother, and I learned it from Willie. Soon, I was making more and more quilts and telling more and more stories. Storytelling has always been a big part of my life. When you look at my quilts close up, you can see how the stitching became part of the artwork. Notice how I stitched pieces of painted canvas together, and how I used colorful pieces of cloth to make my frames. It's fun to read the stories on my quilts, too. Writing was so important to me, as much as painting and sculpting. If you can't find a real Faith Ringgold story quilt to look at, you can always check out one of my children's books, too. I especially like Tar Beach. It tells the story of Cassie Lightfoot, the little girl who's the main character from my Tar Beach story quilts. I hope you get the chance to see some of my work in person. You can get to know my art in museums, galleries, exhibits, and on walls of public buildings all over the United States. I always worked hard to make my dream of becoming a full-time artist come true. I think I've proven that if someone really, really, really wants to do something, they can. Just like Cassie Lightfoot, the little girl in the Tar Beach story, I believe anyone can fly. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed getting to know me, Faith Ringgold, and remember to keep creating so you can fly too. Goodbye.